Join us in this detailed tutorial from our expert trainer who walks you through each step. For an even more hands-on experience, you can download the course files linked below and follow along. Let's get started.
So let me introduce you to today's excellent instructor, Dave Consudo. Dave has 2 master's degrees, one in instructional technologies and the other organizational psychology. He's trained countless learners face-to-face and also many with his online courses. In fact, he's created a number of excellent courses that are well received by learners, including courses for Adobe, large number of courses for Microsoft, including various courses for Office 365, including a recent Excel 365 Essentials course, and many, many more, including some coming later this month and throughout the year. So on that note, Dave, I will now pass it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Simon, for that warm introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. So today is going to be Formulas Introduction class. And just to give you an idea, we are going to kind of start from the basics, and we're going to kind of slowly ramp up towards, I don't want to say more advanced, but possibly more obscure, but incredibly valuable tools. So it's quite possible that maybe some of these functions and formulas you haven't heard of before, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they do not have value to you and will make you more productive and more creative. So let's go ahead. I'm going to start to share my screen. So just give me 1 second here. And you're going to see my screen now with the Excel document shared with you. Let's go ahead without further ado. You'll see this is what we're going to be working with here. Now you will notice that there are several tabs down on the bottom, and this is how we're going to be sort of navigating all throughout the class. All right, so we are going to start off with this relative references tab down here on the bottom. Now, one thing I want to show you that's really just so awesome before we get into actually creating functions is this sort of like automatic set of formulas that you don't even have to incorporate any functions into it just by simply highlighting. So let's just say, for example, I wanted to know how much Q1 was worth in terms of my sales. If I just simply drag on this data, you're going to notice way down on the bottom, go ahead and just show you down here, you'll see that I have all these numbers now up here. It's showing me my average, it's showing me my count, it's showing me my max, all that good stuff without me doing any formulas at all. So watch as I highlight on all of these numbers here, and you're going to see that down below, you'll see, okay, look at that. There they are, all these numbers right there. This is showing me that the total sum for all my sales is $297,000 without me having to do any functions or formulas at all. Now, if you're not seeing as many numbers as I am, all you have to do is simply right click down below, and then you're going to see a lot of stuff come up. But really, we want to focus just mostly on this area right here. And whatever you have checked is then going to show up again automatically whenever you highlight all your content. So really, really neat. And again, without having to know any formulas at all. So that said, if you're ever trying to do just like a basic formula, just like adding anything up, like, you know, this plus this plus this, it's very simple to do that. So the first thing to know about formulas is that they always start off with an equal sign. So if I'm going to do a formula, just going to add up any of these, I just have to type out an equal sign first. And then boom, I'm there. And if I want to add up these 3 numbers, all I got to do is simply click. And then notice how B3, which is my cell address right there, plus, there you go, B4 plus, and you can see it's color coded, and then bam, there you have that. And then I just hit enter. Okay. So very simple, very straightforward there. Now, if you want to do minus, it would be the minus sign. If you want to be multiplication, that's going to be the asterisk, right? So it's going to be this guy right here, which is to shift 8. Okay, and if you're doing a divide, you're going to see it's just going to be a little / just like that. Okay, but what we're going to do is something a little bit more sort of like automatic, because who wants to really have to type all those things out when you don't really need to? So we are going to use this tool called Auto Sum that's going to allow us to do our math, our calculations a lot quicker. Okay, so if you'll notice here, if I just hover my mouse over it, it's going to tell me here, it's going to say in very sort of microscopic writing, so I'll zoom in, automatically add it up. Your total will appear after the selected cells. So what's the implication there? What I should do is simply select what I want to add up. I simply click on this little sigma, and then just like that, I now have a formula, right? It's as easy as that. So when I click on that 55,000, you'll notice here it tells me, you're going to see it's going to say equal sign, as I said, and then that sum is a function, right? It's summing up what? B3 through B5, just these guys right there. Okay, so that's how it works really nicely. Now, one thing to note, if you ever want to kind of teach yourself more and more about any kind of functions at all, you can always click on this little FX icon right there. Now, not only is that going to help you learn about functions, but it's also going to help you kind of walk through a function that you may not understand a little bit easier. So notice I've already done my function. I'm going to click on this right here, and then this little dialog box pops up. And if we look here, you're going to see that it says what the definition of this function is. Okay, and then it's also giving me the results of that function. Okay, and if we go up top here, you're going to see these are basically the components of the function. So it tells me here, this is the name of the function sum. It adds up all the numbers in a range, and then the result is 55,000 because the range here is B3 through B5. I could have also just done it here and just kind of done B3 through B5 and select them that same way. But here's the really probably the most important part is this guy right there where it says help on this function. So if I click on that now, it's now going to take me to, guess what? The Microsoft website. It's going to give me all kinds of information about this particular function. So what I'm going to suggest is that as you sort of move through your career in Excel, you always kind of take the bait and kind of get extra help on these other functions, especially if you're kind of inheriting other people's content. This is always great to know how we can go a little bit deeper. So without further ado, let me go ahead and just do one more here. I'll just go ahead and click on that and you see how easy that is. Bam, that's pretty easy. Okay, great. I'll do one more. Okay, excellent. All right, now let's go ahead and do that in a slightly different way and a little bit faster way. Let's say I wanted to do all the numbers all at once, right? Because productivity is really the name of the game. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight all the numbers. I'm going to go down and to the right. Because guess what? I have a sum that I need here, and I also have a sum that I need over here on the right-hand side. So I highlight everything, but then I kind of overstep and kind of exaggerate a little bit. Then I click on sum, and magically I get my function all displayed there. And notice how it all says sum this, sum that, etc. Now, every single one of these formulas, their output, is what we call dynamic, right? It's actually a living being, right? That like if I change Bob, who's in quarter one, from 15,000 to 50,000, notice how the totals will change for quarter one and also for Bob. See that? It's constantly paying attention because it's looking for the cell value, right? That's essentially how that works. Okay, let's go ahead and do another one. This time I'm going to do average. But instead of doing auto sum, I'm going to type out the function. So I'm just going to do equal sign, as we know. I'm just going to start typing out average. Now you'll notice how average now appears here in blue. So what I'm going to do now is hit the tab key as soon as I see that. And it's going to ask me, what would you like to average? Now I'm going to manually highlight it. Notice what I'm doing here. So it's going to be B3, B4, B5. I hit the enter key, and now I know this is the average. Now earlier when I highlighted everything, we saw how it even showed the average right here as well. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that so you can see what I'm referring to. So just kind of give you an idea of how that works. I'm going to introduce you to an incredibly valuable tool called autofill. Autofill is kind of like a Swiss Army knife because it can be used for a variety of different things, including formulas and formatting and so much more. But for right now, let me show you how we can use autofill to take this formula and apply it to the rest of quarter 2, 3, 4, etc. Okay. Now, what we're about to do is called a relative reference. That's why this tab is called relative reference. So you'll notice here, I have this little tiny green box. If I hover my mouse over it, you're going to get a kind of a thin black little crosshair. That is my autofill handle. So what I'm going to do now is take this formula and fill it to the rest of these respectively, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and click and drag. And now you'll notice how this was average B3. Here is average C3. And I'm just double clicking on these. Average D3, average E, and average F. Notice it now corresponds to these columns. That is known as a relative reference, okay? It's relative to where it started, and then it spills out to the rest of the column. Let's go ahead and do count. I'm going to say COU, hit the tab key. And in this case, I want to count all of our respective transactions. Boom, I do that. Nice and easy, done. So now we have 12. If I were to remove these, Now notice how everything gets all a little bit messed up because there's nothing to add up, but this count, in fact, does go down to 9, as you might expect. Okay, and that's what we're working with here. So I'll just maybe do another one. I want to know who our biggest seller was. I hit max. Let's highlight all the numbers here, and you can see it's 50,000. And then let's do min, and you can see how easy it is. Boom, just like that. So we do have some of these other little auto sums living inside of this little auto sum, right? Meaning we have auto formulas. We can do sum, average, count numbers. They're all kind of living right in there as well, in addition to sum, just depending on what you like to do. But in this case, I just manually type them out. Okay, so really nice, really easy to accomplish. Now let's go ahead and do maybe something a little bit more complex. Okay, because for this little space here, I need to calculate what their commission is going to be. Okay, so I know that they brought in this amount, but I need to tell Bob how much commission he's getting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do equal sign, and now I want to incorporate this into the formula. So equal sign kind of has two different functions. Okay, one is, yes, what we've already explored, to do formulas, but another one might be to link up to a cell. So if I were just to hit OK right now, notice I'm getting the same exact numbers, right? Which is kind of nice to know. We're not talking about formulas necessarily. We're just linking the data, right? Let me just do that one more time. You just do equal sign and literally click, and it's equal F3, right? That kind of makes logical sense, and that's that. But that's not what I want to do. I want to actually say equal F3, and I'm going to multiply this, which is my asterisk, times 0.07. And now you can see, now I know that Bob has a commission of $8,155. And if we go into the formula, we can see it's a very simple formula. Now let's say Bob wants to know what his total commission is going to be, including his salary or whatever he's bringing in here, right? So instead of doing 0.07, I'm going to change this to a 1. Okay, and this is maybe we start getting to that math we learned probably in middle school with all this algebra. This 1 saying here is it's incorporating this into that, right? So therefore, when I add it up, it's not just going to be 7% of it. It's going to be 7% plus the original number. So I just do 0.107, and now Bob's like, okay, that's how much I'm taking home. I could buy myself a new swimming pool or whatever it is. Okay, that's great. Now let's do autofill going down this time. Now we can see beautifully we're all set up. Really nice, really slick, and very important stuff. So just keeping that in mind, just getting these basics out of the way. Let's go ahead and go over here to another tab. And this time we're going to do something called an absolute reference. Earlier, we were talking about relative references. So what we're kind of implying here is that we are going to do another one of those autofills. Now I'm going to do it as a relative reference initially, and you're going to see how it's not going to work. It's going to backfire, but then we're going to see how we can do it the right way. Okay, so again, what we're talking about here is an absolute reference. So let me go ahead and to figure out what's my goal here is to decide, hey, I have an exchange rate between two different countries, right? This is how much my dinner costs in British pounds, and that's all these other things, but the exchange rate to dollars is 1.7. So it's a very simple formula. I'm going to multiply this times this, right? And all I'm doing is clicking on them, right? Very nice and easy. And now you'll see that's how much I should be getting back from my CPA or whoever's taking care of this. That's great. Now, I just learned about autofill. So earlier, remember we talked about this little crosshair? And I'm just going to simply click and drag down, and then, uh-oh, I have a problem, right? Let's explore what the problem is, right? So notice I started off with these two as far as my formula. But when I come down to here, notice how, yes, it's taking in B6, but then it's also multiplying C3. Right? What about this one? This one is multiplying, yes, B7, but it's multiplying what? C4. Oh, I see the pattern. As one goes down, the other goes down. So what I need to do is make it so C2 is locked in place. That's what an absolute reference does for me. It's going to lock it. It's going to anchor it, right? Think about it like that. So instead of just doing C2, I have to put in these dollar signs here, right? So this is known as an absolute reference, right? Absolute reference. So you can see now what I did on my keyboard is I just actually typed out F4. Some of you may have to do FN, F4, and that will make it into an absolute reference. Let me just show you now. If I just kind of keep tapping F4 on my keyboard, that converts it with those dollar signs. So now you can see there, I have that there. Now I'm going to do my autofill, drag it down, and now beautiful, that seems to work out. So that's really kind of the beginning and end of the lesson of absolute references. Understand why we use absolute references and also understand how we incorporate the absolute reference into the function itself. Okay, and again, that's going to be the F4 key, or if that doesn't work, try the FN F4 key. Okay, excellent. So that concludes our sort of like really kind of basic introduction stuff. Now we're going to move on to some really valuable text functions. So what we're going to do is we're going to explore how we can automatically use functions to modify text in a variety of different ways. So let's go ahead and see some of these ones that I have in yellow. Okay, I've highlighted them so you can identify where the preset ones are already, so you can kind of deconstruct them on your own. So notice here I have all of these USDs and GBPs and all that stuff, and I'd really like to make them all in caps. So if I double click on this, you'll notice there is a function called upper, a function called upper, okay? So that is what's allowing this to happen, right? To make this an all uppercase. There are other ones too. There's proper, there's lower. Let's go and explore this one for right now. I'm just gonna do equal sign, upper, and then remember I can just hit the tab key. And all I do is simply click on what I want to make an uppercase. It's as simple as the formula gets. I'm going to hit enter, and you can see, there you have it. Okay, really amazing. Let's just try another one just for fun. Let's just try proper. Okay, and now what proper is going to do, it's just going to only do the first letter, right? You see that? So it's only going to do like kind of a proper name, right? And if I did lower, it would make them all lowercase, right? But they're not lower. They're already lower, so we don't need to do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that one more time. I'm just going to go ahead and just do equal sign. And I'm going to say upper, and I'm just going to go ahead and select my cell, and then boom, there you have it. And that's all there is to it. But now what I'd like to do is make it so all of these, it spills down with autofill and in a relative way, because right now this is A3, and I want it to go A4, A5, etc. Now here's a nice little trick. Instead of clicking and dragging down, right here where my autofill handle is, I'm going to double click, right? I'm going to double click to kind of do an autofill, right? So watch this. I'm going to double click and then boom, just like that, I'm done. We're going to do that a handful more times here, but you can see how valuable that is, right? For a variety of different reasons. Now let's go ahead and jump over to another really, really valuable text function. I have a lot of extra little spaces here, right? All these spaces here, they're not supposed to be there, right? Whatever kind of system I'm working with, they brought them all in and it's a problem, right? So Excel has a really nice function called trim. We're gonna be able to trim all this extra stuff here. So notice how it got rid of all the extra spaces between David and Murray, and then you can see we're gonna be able to do it for all the rest of these. So I'm gonna do very simply equal sign trim, okay, hit the tab key, and now very simply, I do that, and now beautiful. It's only got one space in there. It knows exactly how many spaces to do. And now let's go ahead and do our autofill, just again by simply double clicking on my autofill handle. Boom, done, and wow, much, much better. Love that, okay? Now, one thing to note about this situation is that if I were to remove these right here, these will get affected. You need to understand that, right? Let's just say I were to delete this because I don't need this anymore. So if I delete this, I'm going to have a problem. Just keep that in mind. I'm going to go and undo. So what a lot of people might do is just simply hide it, right? And it still keeps it. So you just don't need it there anymore. You're just referring back to it. Okay, so I'm going to go and undo that. And that said, right, understanding that there is a link directly to A2. If I were to change this from USD to GBP, you can see how that automatically changes right there. Let's change this to MEX, boom, just like that. You can see, right, boom, let's do another one, right? You can see how it automatically changes. It's still linking up to that original cell, right? Actually, I'm gonna make this lowercase because that's what we wanna do here. And it still keeps it, right? And it's all uppercase, and it also maintains whatever's inside of that cell. Beautiful, love that. Okay, so just keep that in mind. If you delete something, it is linking up to the original. Now let's go ahead and move on to what we call concatenate, right? Which they've actually shortened to just concat. So what does concatenate mean? Right, it's a very big word. Okay, what all that means is we're joining together two cells into one. Okay, and this is a very common one right here, where we have a first name and a last name. But a lot of times it might be like a city and a state and a zip code, or however you're working with, right? Maybe it could be like a product ID and then the current year, right? Or maybe the manager and then whatever they're working with. It could be a variety of different things that you want to join together. That's what a concatenate is. So you'll notice here, Anna and Jones are separated here. And then in this one, we have used the concat formula to join them together. Now, this one is a little bit interesting because notice how we have E2, which is this right here, which is Anna, and we have F2, which is Jones. But notice this little funny syntax right there, okay? Of course, they're separated out by commas. That's great. But notice here how I have a space and then I have these little kind of quotes here. The quotes and the space in between are part of the syntax. If I did not put a space there, there would be no space between Anna and Jones. Let me demonstrate for you. I'm going to do equal sign, concat, hit the tab key. And I'm just going to go ahead and just do Colin, comma, and then Charles, right? Just like that, right? This is what I'm trying to join. And then let me go ahead and close it out. And then you can see that's not what I want, right? There's no space there. Okay, and that's going to be a bit of a problem. So what I need to do is very simply put in a space, but because it's the text element, I have to put it into quotes. Okay, so I'm going to do this, quote, open quote with a space, right? Open quote, and then next one just like that. Okay, so think about the space as an actual character in this. Okay, now I hit enter, and now beautiful, I have what I want there. Now that could have been really anything. You know, I could have said, 2025 or whatever it is, maybe their department, something like that. This could be anything I want to add in there. It just so happens that the space is the thing that I was looking to add on to that, right? So now I'm good to go. I've done all the hard work. I'm going to go ahead and go double click, and now beautiful, everybody's got that, just the same. That's concat, right? Used to be called concatenate, but now they've shortened it and it does pretty much the same thing. But some of you may see concatenate with some of the programs and some of the files you're working with because they might be older, but they pretty much do the same thing. Now, let me show you another one that you may run into, and that's going to be this guy right here with an ampersand. Now, just let's explore kind of what we're looking at here. Notice how we have E2, the ampersand, right, which is essentially just like an and, okay? And then we have the open quotes and then ampersand and F2, right? We're just basically saying, hey, this and that, right? And people, it does the same exact thing, but it's a shorthand for using concatenate. Many people use this all the time. So I want you to be prepared if you ever do in fact see it, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just gonna do this guy, right? And we'll just do Colin, ampersand, okay? And then I'm gonna do my open quotes with a space. And then I'm gonna do another ampersand. I'm adding that onto that. And then boom, I just do that, okay? And then there I have Colin Charles. So what's interesting to note is that there's no formula here, is there? There's no commas in there, nothing, right? So a lot of people like that because it's a little bit cleaner, all right? But it does accomplish the same exact thing. And understand what's happening here. We have the cell, and then we have an ampersand to say, hey, we're going to join these together, right? With what? A space and this F3, okay? But we are starting off with an equal sign. So even though it's not a formula, we're still linking up to these cells, and that's why we have the equal sign there, okay? And now let's go ahead and finish that off. Beautiful. And now we pretty much get the same exact thing. So really just fielder's choice. It's really up to you. But I do want to prepare you for some things you may see when you get out there because there's a lot of people who do things a little bit differently. Very good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do what we call a nested function. I know it sounds fancy and I don't want you to get too intimidated, but all it is just two functions at once. So if we double click on this, I just want you to see here what's happening is that we have a trim and an upper all happening at the same time. Because in this case, what's my goal? I need to get rid of all the extra spaces, and I need to make it an uppercase. So you can see it's just kind of like two guys kind of working together at the same time. Say, hey, we're going to partner up. We're going to trim it, and we're also going to make it upper. Now, the trickiest part of this is notice the open parentheses here, and then notice this open parentheses here, and then notice how there's two in a row. That could kind of mess people up a little bit. Now, if you forget, right, because we forget, I do it a million times a day. I'm like, oh, I kind of go to sleep a little bit. Excel is very forgiving about it, and it will say, hey, you know what, we think you messed up a little bit, and it may try to help you out, okay? But understand why there's two parentheses. Because we have two functions happening at the same time, right? You can see we have upper kind of living inside of trim. So this first one with the black right there, that is for trim to end here. And then upper is just this little kind of meat in the sandwich right in the middle. That's why there's two of them there, okay? And a lot of times, like I said, you may forget, and it's okay. So we're going to say trim upper. So equal sign, trim, right? Open parentheses. And then immediately I just say upper, just like that, right? And then what am I doing it to? Just these guys right here. And I'm going to do 1 and then 2 parentheses to close out both upper and trim. But let's just see what happens if I forget, right? I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to get an error message here. We found a typo and tried to correct it. Oh my God, thank you, Excel. And then notice how it's giving me the correction, right? Which is very cool. I'm going to say yes, and now it's fixed it for me, right? One less thing I got to worry about. Okay, let me just do that one more time. Equal sign, trim, go right to upper, boom, close parentheses. And I'm going to learn from my last lesson. I'm going to do 2 parentheses, and now bam, all good. Look how slick that is. Now I'll do my double click to autofill, and beautiful. So now we're rocking and rolling. So there's a lot of really, really great text functions out there, not just for numbers, but also for text. Now let's go ahead and go to our if functions. Again, a little more obscure if you're just kind of used to basic calculations, but not super difficult, right? Once you kind of really understand the logic and flow of them. So in this sales sheet, I have a sales goal for all of my products to be 8,500, right? Now, these are all of their total products, right? We can see here, this is how much they brought in. Now, I need to do a little output to say, hey, listen, if they have reached their sales goal, let's go ahead and give it like a little bit of a word, right? Let's just say like, hey, nice job, right? Or hey, going to Puerto Rico to celebrate, something like that. So because they've met their sales goal, okay? So we are going to use something called an if function. If they've met their sales goal, then do this, right? So it's a logical if this, then that type of function. So let's go ahead and do an example of this. I'm going to do equal sign, if, I hit my tab key, and then notice how it starts off with a little cheat sheet. If, logical test, what? Meaning if this is greater than this, right, 8,500, I hit my comma, now I'm in value of true. Then what do I want to do? I want to say congrats, right? And notice I'm putting it in quotes because it's text. Then I hit comma again. I jump over to here now to value of false, right? And I'll just say needs marketing, right? Because we need to kind of get the word out a little bit, okay? So I'm going to hit enter, and you can see it says congrats, right? Because they have exceeded this, okay? See that? Now let's go ahead and just override this. I'll bring this down to 3,000. Now it says needs marketing. So it's dynamic. It's always, always listening. Now, one thing to note is that this does not have to be text. It's really cool. Like instead, I could maybe put in some numbers there, like maybe a formula, something like that, right? So putting into text, absolutely can do that, put it into quotes, or maybe I wanted to say, hey, listen, when this happens, right, I need to actually make a formula out of that. So let's go ahead and do it again. I'm going to say if this is greater than this, then what I want to do is I'm going to actually embed a formula into this, right? We just did formulas, right? We did really simple formulas. Now we're taking what we learned earlier and we're going to put a formula inside of the value of true. So I'm essentially going to say this, I'm going to say times, I'll just say 10%, right? Because then they're going to get a 10% commission on this. Value if false, I'm going to multiply this, let's just say times 2%. You can see that? So instead of putting what I did with text earlier, I'm putting in a formula. Now you can see this person has exceeded it. So there we're now showing 10%, right? Let's go ahead and just explore this a little bit. You can see if F9 is greater than that B4, which is 8,500, then multiply that F9, their total sales, by 10%. If they did not exceed 8,500, just multiply by 2%. Really cool. Okay, so again, very nice logical formula. Now here is one little bit of a tricky bit, because I want to do all of the rest of these as a formula, and I want to do it with an autofill. I want to do an absolute reference on this B4, right? So it's coming back to what we did a few minutes ago, because remember, an absolute reference is like an anchor. I want to anchor this B4 into the formula, so it always stays B4. If I were to do an autofill right now, I'm going to have all kinds of problems. It's hard for you to tell, but notice how it's linking up to the wrong cells, right? It's like it's not linking to 8,500 anymore. It might look pretty, but it's all messed up, right? It's like it's not doing the proper way. So this is another really great example of when we would do what? An absolute reference, okay? So who can tell me, at least quietly in the back of your head, what is the keyboard shortcut to make B4 into an absolute reference? And that's going to be the F4 key, right? Because now I want B4 to always be locked into place. So therefore, when I do my autofill, it's always going to be locked in to that 8,500 no matter what. So now you can see it's always going to be 8,500 no matter where I am, always, always, always 8,500. Okay, you can see that. So it always locks in place. And now if I now make my sales goal, let's say 15,000 all of a sudden, right? We're going to have a lot lower numbers here, right? And then see this guy now says needs marketing. So it makes it so it's nice and dynamic and it's linking up to this cell. So really, really slick. Okay, and hopefully you understand the logic and the flow to it, right? So let me just kind of zoom in a little bit. So again, we can sort of deconstruct this. If F9 is greater than B4, then multiply it by 10%. If not, multiply it by 2%. And once again, making sure that that cell is locked in place for when I do my autofill. Okay, hopefully we're pretty clear on that. It feels comfortable. Now let's go ahead and move on to another set of ifs. Okay. This is going to be a sum if. And again, a little more obscure, but it doesn't necessarily mean it has to feel advanced to you. So think about like the end of the year, right? Like, you get your credit cards and your credit card is saying, hey, listen, this is how much you've spent on these particular categories. So the if part is like you spent it on dining, you spent it on travel, you spent it on gasoline, something like that. And then they're finding all of the numbers associated with that sum, okay? So what we're going to do is say, hey, listen, for every East, we want to know how did they fare for the prior year. For all of the East, let's know how they did for the current year. So it's basically kind of cherry picking out all of the numbers for each of those categories, okay? See that? So it's essentially adding up, hey, it's finding East and it's adding up magically 12,000 plus 6,900, great. And we get this number here. I don't want to have to do that. That's where a sum if comes in. I have incorporated this little formula to be able to, you can see what it looks like here. Now, one thing, and I really want to kind of make you sort of experts, even though you might feel like you're just beginners, doing these little simple things are going to make you go from beginner to expert very quickly. And this is something known as a named range, okay? Don't be intimidated by these terms you haven't heard before. All it is a range of data we have named. So notice, incorporate into the formula, it says region, and we also have sales prior. So each of these, right, you can see here, this is a range of data that I have named. This is a range of data that I have named. this is a range of data that I have named. Number one, why did I name it? I named it so I can incorporate it into the formula. And number two, how did I name it? Well, all I did was simply highlight my data and come over to here to something called the name box, right? It's so simple, right? This is the name box. So let's just say I want to do something for store code. It's going to highlight all of these, go over to here. I'm going to just type out code, hit enter. Now I have a named range and I can incorporate this into a formula. Let's do this one more time, right? I'm just going to go and highlight these, come over to this little weird box here, right? And I'll just say inc_sales for increase, right? And then boom, now I have a named range and you can see them all living there. Now, why did I do that? I did it for simplicity to be able to incorporate it into a formula. Okay, now I did that also to make the formula a lot more readable too. So let's go ahead and do the formula for SUMIF for the North region. So I'm going to do equal sign, I'm going to say SUMIF, okay, there's my formula, and my range that I want to find the sum in is going to be region. Now I could easily highlight everything there for my range for region, but I'm actually going to type out REGION, and notice how that just appears. So that's going to be the first part. The criteria is just going to be north, right? That's what I'm trying to get at. But now here's the fun part. It's the summing part. So remember, it's two factors. It's going to find north and then sum range. It's going to find all of its numbers, right? So notice I'm here for the sales prior year. This time I'm just going to highlight it, right? I'm highlighting everything. I could have typed out the name range and notice how it automatically changes to that sales prior. And then boom, you have it all right there, close it out. And now we're finding all the instances of north, 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 and all of its numbers, and it's added it up for me. Isn't that amazing? Okay, this time I'm going to do it a little bit faster. I'm going to do SUMIF, range, again, I'm going to do region, okay, and then I'll say north once again. Notice it's not case sensitive. And then my sum range, this is going to be sales current. Boom, comes up, and you can see how it can even be a lot slicker, right? So let me go ahead and just take this formula. I can show you what it shows here. So we can now deconstruct what I have here. Really, really cool. Okay, so we can see we've just learned kind of a handful of things, right? We learned about what SUMIF can do for us, summing it if it meets the criteria, and then adding its numbers. And then we also did a named range to incorporate those range of data, right, into the formula itself. And just notice how elegant that looks, right? It looks nice and clean. I'm gonna be able to actually talk about it, right, in a much more easy way. I work with other people. They'll be able to see it a lot cleaner. Let's go ahead and do an average if. Average it if it meets this criteria. You can see average if, and now my range, same exact situation, no different, right? I just highlighted this case, right? The criteria is north, and then my average range is going to be for the current year. So again, I can highlight if I want to, or I'm just going to go ahead and type it out. Boom, that pops right up. And now we have it all right there. So if you're ever concerned, if you're like, hey, wait a second, I want to learn more about this, let's back out to what I showed you once upon a time. You can always click on this little effects. Remember earlier we talked about that? And then you can always go to help on this function. You can also watch and learn on the Microsoft website about SUMIF right there on their website, right? So just keep that in mind. It's all right there. You can watch a video. You're going to learn all about it right there. I guarantee you, you'll do fine with this. It might seem a little bit different, a little bit kind of intimidating, but you can see that there's a nice logical flow to it. Now let's do one last one. And this is going to be, I want to count how many norths there are, right? So we're going to do, instead of a SUMIF, we're going to do a count if. And remember, it has to meet a certain criteria. So I'm going to say equal sign count if, not summing it, but counting it. And this one's a lot more simple. The range is region, okay? And my criteria is just going to be north. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and just simply type out the word north, or I could even click inside of this cell. Look at that. Isn't that neat? So essentially, instead of typing out north, it's going to be whatever is going to be inside of this cell, I can make it do that, right? So it becomes really dynamic. So if this changes, this is always going to change as well, right? Whatever's in G10, right? Now you can see, let's make that into not currency. Go to make that into a number, okay? Boom, now I have 4 norths. You can see that there. That's awesome. Now, if I were to change this from east over here, notice where I am over here, to north, notice how that changes to 5. This changes to a 3. It's all living, it's all dynamic. Now, there's a lot more here for you to practice when the time comes. The more you do it, the more you're going to see there's a nice logical flow to it. But it really is just simple syntax that flows from one to the other. And then think about the credit card example I gave you earlier, something we can all relate to. We're summing it if it meets the criteria. How much did I spend on gas last year? That's what your credit card is doing for you. It looks up for the criteria and the amount you spend, and it sums it up. Very cool. Now let's go ahead and just do a couple of exercises on another really important, and again, not super crazy formula, the function called VLOOKUP. So notice I have a little hint for you what it does for you. We're going to extract or look up data from an other table. So in this case, notice how I have the ID number right here, and I'm wanting to get the employee name and the salary from this data set. I do not know that information. So what I need to do is do what's called a VLOOKUP. V just stands for vertical, right? It's going to be looking down here. Basically, think about this as I'm like looking for like kind of a long lost twin. And that long lost twin has some family members that this guy would like to be introduced to, right? So somewhere out there is a 29002, somewhere in here, right? We got to find it. And you can see there it is right there. So we need to find Suzanne Farmer and her salary and all that stuff right there. So that's what a VLOOKUP is going to allow us to do. So let's go ahead and just do equal sign, of course, VL, right? And you can see there's VLOOKUP. Beautiful, right? So now it's asking us a few things here. It's asking us for the lookup value. That is typically the number that we know. And it's right here. It's 99% of the time, it's going to be this number that's going to be like your social security number, your employee ID number. It's going to be a phone number. It's usually going to be something very unique that's going to allow you to then say, hey, listen, this is the number that's going to help me cross-reference into another data set. So that's my lookup value. My table array is, hey, where are we going to find all the data we're looking for, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and highlight all the data, right, all the way down to the end, right? Boom. And you can see here, that is known as my table array, right? Fancy word for basically saying, just show me where all the data lives, okay? No big deal. And then now we have this kind of weird language of the column index number. Well, all it's saying is, hey, within this whole table, what number column are we going to find the employee name, right? Not a big deal. It's going to be column 2, 1, 2. You might think it's going to go EF, but no, it's the second column in what you've selected, right? So boom, I just do that, column 2, because I'm looking for my employee name. And then this part here is we want an exact match, right? If you can see right there, let's zoom in a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and type out false. Okay, so false is my exact match. And now you can see it is in fact Suzanne Farmer. Okay, so let me go ahead and just show you if I were to change this to 11242, 11242 for this guy, it's going to go now to Patricia. So it's living and dynamic, looking it up based off those variables. Let's go ahead and keep it at this 11242 so we can actually see Patricia's salary very quickly and easily. So how do I do that? I'm now going to do another VLOOKUP. Equal sign VL, hit the tab key, and now again, here is my lookup value, right? It's just hanging out right there. Doesn't have to go too far. Comma, my table array. I'm going to highlight all my data. Okay, boom, it's H3 all the way down to H74. Okay, great, that's where I'm going to find everything. And now the column index number, this is the one part that's going to be different because instead of the employee name, I'm looking for the compensation. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Really easy, right? And then I say false. And then you can see that she, in fact, is making $86,203. Love that. Okay. And now, because this is an opportunity for me to do an autofill, I never want to have to do that ever again. I'm now going to do an autofill. So all of these numbers respective to this data now come in. So I only have to do it one time. It's really kind of incredible. I do not have to worry about an absolute reference in this case, right? Actually, let's go ahead and make these into an absolute reference. Not for the A3. Do not have to worry about it for this one, but for these I do, right? I'm going to do F4. Great. And now let's go ahead and do my double click. And now you can see, beautiful. It's now cherry picked all of these guys right here. So notice that we have 12747, and we'll find it there. There is Laura Best. And you can see 1247, it's Laura Best. Amazing. Let's go into here. And then I'm going to make all of these into an absolute reference by tapping on my F4 key. And now let's go ahead and do a double click. And now, beautifully, I've done it all. Really so amazing, so helpful. And again, it might seem a little bit intimidating if you haven't done VLOOKUP before, but it's a very simple kind of rhyme and reason to it all, right? Just what are we looking up to be able to find the thing we're looking for? Think about it as a cross-reference tool, right? We're extracting it out, but we need to know one particular number, right? So think about if you're working in HR and you want to keep like everybody's employee data confidential, you might have their employee number. That would be your lookup value to be able to find their salary, find their next of kin, their phone numbers, you know, all that stuff. And that's essentially what we're doing to be able to get all the data here. Now, I'm going to show you one last thing with VLOOKUP, where sometimes you want to look up data that's going to be way on the outside of your data set. So you'll notice here I have this employee ID, and then over here I have my lookup value. I want to know, right, what the employee name is when it's on another sheet altogether. So the good news is your process is more or less the same. Okay, meaning when we get the data going to the other side, right, we just have to go to another tab to get it. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do this. I'm going to say VLOOKUP, right? And then what's my lookup value? It's my employee number, right? Again, it's just sitting right there. My table array, well, I don't have a table here anymore. Not a big deal. I go to where the table lives, right? I'm going to highlight all my data, right? I have it all right there. Okay, and now you can see here is my B5. And now what am I looking for? I'm looking for their name, and it's in column 2. So very much the same thing as we did before. And I'm going to type out false. And now you can see E001 is in fact Malcolm. Let me go ahead and make this a little bit wider so you can really see it. You can see B5, it looks up my data. Where is it looking for it? The main difference here is it looks in another external sheet. And then my column index number is 2. Why is it 2? Because the name lives in the second column of the table array. Okay, let me do that one more time. And this time it's going to be for department. Now I happen to know department is in the 5th column here, right? So now let's do that one more time. I'm going to do equal sign, VLOOKUP, and there's my lookup value, table array. I'm just going to go ahead and find it all right there. And now it's going to be in the 5th column, still in my formula here. I'll type out false. And now we can see Malcolm is in fact inside human resources. Let's confirm that. There it is. And now let's imagine that you are the HR person and you're going through your day and you're like, oh, you know what? Let's see who E007 is. Boom, watch this. It now changes to Melissa James. Let's verify that. E007, Melissa James, who's in accounts, who's making da-da-da-da. Look at that, Melissa James who's in accounts. Go E002. You can see how it automatically changes to Shannon Lee, who's in accounts. So very slick. It's like you're creating a little machine to kind of have a little database to look up or extract out data that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to get. Okay, so again, you want to go a little bit deeper into these, you can always go into your little effects and you'll be able to see the breakdown of each of these formulas. Break it down just like that. You can even put in the formulas this way if you want to do it step by step. It gives you a nice description of the formulas. And once again, you have a nice little tutorial option to be able to learn more about it.
Well, congratulations everyone for completing this course. So hope you enjoyed this class, hope you learned a lot, And we look forward to seeing you in future lessons. Thanks, everyone.
What was your favorite part of this tutorial? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Visit the Simon Says It channel, explore our videos and training sessions, and decide what you want to learn next.